Oh, yeah. So if you've listened to my program for any period of time, you know that one of my key issues in this whole election was the Supreme Court stupid. Forget the economy, forget everything else. For me, it was the Supreme Court. I felt that we needed to have someone in office who was going to make good decisions on judges, plus not stack the Supreme Court to the liberal side that would affect us for the next 20 or 30 years. We're joined right now by John Malcolm, who's a legal analyst for the Heritage Foundation and director of the Edward Meese Center for Legal and Judicial Studies there at Heritage. How are you, John?
I'm doing fine. Good to be with you.
Well, it's good to be with you. I believe it might have been Hans von Spakovsky that I had on the show one time, and we were talking about the number of judges that Barack Obama had managed to appoint to the lower courts in his time in office, and it was a pretty staggering number.
Yeah, actually, so let me play off a little bit on what you just said. So the Supreme Court is, of course, was a major issue in this campaign, and rightfully so. But I want to put this in perspective. So the Supreme Court decides between 70 and 80 cases a year. The lower federal courts, the courts of appeals, last year decided 55,000 cases. Over an 8-year period of time, Barack Obama has now named over a third of the lower federal court judges. So on the courts of appeals, when Barack Obama took the oath of office, 1 out of the 13 federal courts of appeals had a majority of democratically appointed judges on it. Now it's 9 out of 13. You have what used to be very reliably conservative courts like the Fourth Circuit, which covers North Carolina, Virginia, South Carolina. That used to be a very reliable conservative court. Now there are 10 Democratic judges to 5 Republican judges, and you get cases like the Fourth Circuit striking down North Carolina's photo ID law, the Virginia transgender bathroom case. So these lower federal courts, really, given the volume of cases that they hear, are often the end of the line in terms of where cases go. The Supreme Court usually only takes cases when there is a split between circuits as to what the law ought to be. But with all of these lower courts now being controlled by Democrats and more liberal judges, the law has skewed very much in a progressive direction. So these lower federal courts are incredibly important, too. And there are 49 vacancies in which there have been nominations that are now pending before the Senate.
Yeah, it seems like there was a time when the court we commented on most frequently to make fun of some decision they made was the Ninth Circuit Court out in San Francisco. But
right.
Now what you're saying is there are a lot more Ninth Circuit courts out there.
You bet. Fourth Circuit, the Sixth Circuit, in fact, which may be even more liberal than the Ninth Circuit. I mean, there are now only, as I say, 4 courts of appeals that still have a majority Republican appointees, but barely. I mean, some of them have like 1 more Republican judge. And a number of these judges that have been appointed by Obama are perfectly fine, but some of them are not, and have been extremely aggressive and progressive, and to my mind have bent the law beyond its breaking point in order to reach liberal results.
Wow. So, John Malcolm, when it comes to the pending judges, there are what, 50?
49.
49 still
27
pending.
Of them, 27 of them before the Senate Judiciary Committee, and 22 of them have actually already passed out of the Senate Judiciary Committee and are now on the floor awaiting a vote.
Do you think that, have you heard anything on whether those get a vote in a lame duck session?
Well, I sure as heck hope not, particularly the 7 courts of appeals vacancies for which you have nominees. I mean, those judgeships are one step below the Supreme Court and wield a tremendous amount of influence. I'm not sure any of these judges should get a vote. If some of them are acceptable to Republicans, they can always be renominated by President Trump. I suppose you might have a couple of district court judgeships from red states where both Republican senators have signed off on that judgeship. But of course, it may have been a compromise reached with Barack Obama, and you might be able to get a better judge under a President Trump. But I suppose there might be a couple of those district court judges that have the support of 2 Republican senators that might get some votes. Other than that, if it were me, I'd shut it down. And I'd say, sorry, it just happens when you have a change of party sometimes. This happens to nominations. These are life-tenured positions, and they are just too important. If you're going to start rebalancing the federal judiciary, you need to start right now with every open vacancy.
That's an excellent point. What kind of an impact can President Trump have let's just assume he's a one-term president, but in 4 years he could really help balance this out again, couldn't he?
Yeah, well, you get about a third, a little more sometimes, if you're lucky, like Obama's been, over an 8-year period of time. So you can fill about a sixth or a fifth of the federal judiciary, particularly if you're filling courts of appeals vacancies. It can make an impact. 8 years is better than 4 years, but 4 years can make a big difference, particularly, of course, with the Supreme Court, because he's filling the Scalia vacancy. And as I've written before, there's no guarantee that President Trump will get another vacancy to fill. But on Inauguration Day, you're going to have 3 justices, Ginsburg, Kennedy, and Breyer, who will already be older than the average lifespan of men and women in this country.
Right.
So the odds are pretty good that over 4 years and certainly over 8 years, one or possibly all 3 of those justices will either retire or, frankly, die in office like Justice Scalia.
I was going to say, didn't Justice Ginsburg claim she didn't want to serve under a Trump presidency?
Yeah, but she was talking about moving to New Zealand, but she can't sit on the court from New Zealand. I think she'll be serving.
Maybe she'd had a couple glasses of wine when that interview took place. That's possible.
No. If I were the Democrats, I'd be giving her all sorts of multivitamins and try to keep her as healthy as possible.
That's a great point. John Malcolm, thanks so much from Heritage Foundation. I'll direct people to heritage.org. Thanks for your time.
Good to be with you.
Yep.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving to you, and thank you. That's very insightful. So hopefully Mitch McConnell, the folks in the Senate, will kind of slow walk this so that they can get out of there by Christmas and wait for the new Congress to come in and let the president reappoint some of these or just give them no votes, however that works out. This is it. That's it, ladies and gentlemen. That's the sweet spot for me. What John Malcolm was talking about. We might think of what 4 or 8 more years of a liberal presidency would have done to our court system. It might have been irreversible. But now we have a chance to make back some of that ground. 9 of the 13 were predominantly liberal courts of appeals in the United States. That's huge. And then, like he said, they're hearing 55,000 cases to the Supreme Court's 60 or 70. Tremendous impact. When we come back, the assault weapons ban in St. Louis. You're going to be a little surprised at what all Lyda Crewson wants to ban, and we're going to talk to an expert on how that all holds up to the Missouri Constitution. It's coming up on The Mark Cox Show.